Welcome to Chills with Chas. We'll continue the Haunted Heartland series with the stories The Odon Fires and The Unofficial Libarian. Let's get into it. Quite possibly the most terrifying fear of all may be that induced by the demon poltergeist which set fires for no apparent reason. Hundreds of cases of mysterious fires have been recorded over the centuries, and while many have been attributed to the work of very human hands, still other cases, and there are dozens, remain unsolved. Homes, automobiles, and people reduced to smoldering embers. What causes these spontaneous immolations? How can a fire erupt in one isolated place, consume only a few items, and leave the rest of the area unscorched? What is it that has given rise to the specter known as a fire poltergeist? An investigator of the particular phenomenon can find many examples to study in the Midwest. One of the strangest ever recorded cases, the peaceful countryside near Odon, Indiana, to erupt in horror during April 1941. The terrifying scene occurred at the William Hackler farm. Fire from no apparent source broke out all over the house. So disturbing were the events that Mr. Hackler actually destroyed his home and moved away rather than stay and face the terror of the flames. The particular April morning began innocently enough. The Hackler family rose early and finished their breakfast a few minutes before 8. The weather had been unusually warm, and Mr. Hackler wanted to get an early start with his day's planting. No one remembered just who smelt the fire whiffs of smoke, or who smelt the first whiffs of smoke. The heavy scent of smoldering wood was distinctive. Parents and children fanning out to search, and soon found a small blaze in a second-floor bedroom under the window. The fire seemed to be coming from within the wall. The Odon Fire Department was called and extinguished the fire. What made this first fire and all the rest particularly unnerving was that the house had not been wired for electricity. Children and parents pleaded their innocence. No one had been seen going in or out of the bedroom all morning. It was unusually unoccupied. The long day had just begun. No sooner had the Odon Fire Department returned to town than they were called back to the farm. Miss Hackler had discovered another fire smoldering in a mattress in another bedroom. Again, the fire seemed to be burning within the feather mattress. Within minutes, all hell broke loose. Fire began everywhere, and all 9 fires were discovered between 8 and 11 a.m. that morning. When firefighter noticed a thin wisp of smoke coming from a shelf in the living room, he walked over, picked up a book that seemed to be the nearest to smoke, opened its cover, and found it too, burning on the inside. A pair of Mr. Hackler's overalls hanging over a door went up in a quick flash of flame. While neighbors stood staring, a bedsheet turned to ash. The calendar hanging on the kitchen wall ignited, and on it went. The room in the house was spared, or no room in the house was spared. yet nothing was seriously damaged. Only small items, such as clothes, household items, seemed to explode into flame. The house itself never caught fire. What caused the Odon fires? There was no electricity in the Hackler house, nor was there a fire burning in the kitchen wood stove. In addition, no one was ever accused of deliberately setting the fires. Those who observed the events said it was an invisible hand had lit 1,000 matches in the old farmhouse. As the day finally ended, 28 fires had been discovered and brought under control by volunteer firefighters from 2 adjacent communities. The Hecklers themselves were through. They had had enough. When the last fire had been extinguished, William Hackler gathered up his family and moved their beds outside and spent the night beneath the stars. Nothing could make him go back into that cursed house. 1 week later, Hackler dismantled the house room by room, salvaging the lumber, and built a new house several miles away. By all accounts, the Hacklers were never again plagued with mysterious fires. Several unusual explanations for the Odon fires were later offered to inquisitive reporters. One man claimed that the Hackler farm was situated in the center of a strong magnetic field which somehow had triggered the fires. Other observers believed that an old well may have been producing gas that ignited sections of the house. Neither theory was ever validated. Officials eventually closed the case of the Odon fires, terming it a most baffling mystery. There was only one ironic footnote to the Odon fires. The Travelers Insurance Company later published a full-page advertisement in an April 19, 1941 edition of Callers magazine describing the Hackler fires. It seems that the company had insured the family against loss by fire. Any kind of fire. The Unofficial Libarian. It would be every librarian's dream, a dedicated assistant who worked whenever necessary, often late in the evening, asked for no paycheck, and was 100% effective in encouraging borrowers to return material filched from library shelves. That perfect librarian did exist, as a ghost. According to a legend, at DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana, the first report that a spectral being haunted old Whitcomb Library came in the early 1900s. A young man arrived at the DePaul campus. On his first visit to the library, he discovered the rare book collection given to the school by the late Governor James Whitcomb, after whom Hoosier poet James Whitcomb Riley was named. Whitcomb had been an avid collector of books most of his life, and he bequeathed this private library to DePaul on the stipulation they be used for research purposes only and never taken from the library building. The student had read the rules, but he became so entranced with one volume in particular that he slipped it into his pocket to take home and read. He had never intended, or he He had every intention of returning it the next day. The book was titled The Poems of Odon, a mysterious and exotic volume of verses written in India. Published in Philadelphia in 1789 and given to the young James Whitcomb in 1813 as a gift. It was late now, well past midnight. In his hands the student held the yellowed, dusty volume. The vivid Indian poetry was alien to his mind. At last he snapped off the light and tucked the volume under his pillow. Sleep did not come easily, for the images contained in Odon's poetry floated through the student's brain. He didn't know how long he had been asleep when suddenly he was woken by what? A sound? Someone knocked at his door. His eyes slowly focused. At the foot of his bed hung a spectral body drifting in dark, musty clothes, a skeletal arm reaching toward the terrified boy. Its bony fingers pointed accusingly. "Who stole Odon?" It intoned. "Odon. Odon." Over and over it moaned the title of the book hidden beneath the student's pillow. The ghost lashed out toward the quivering figure on the bed. Its bony hand actually touched the boy's face. "Odon, Odon," came the wail. An eternity later, or so it seemed to the young victim, the figure faded away. The student shivered in a protective crouch at the head of the bed. For the rest of the night he did not move, fearful the spectre might return. At the first light, the boy quickly dressed and snatched up the pilfered volume of poetry. The women in the library's main desk were startled by the breathless student, who ran up to her as the doors were unlocked. "Here it is. Here is Odon," he blurted out, confessing that he had taken the book from the library. Further, he told the bewildered librarian the ghost of the governor Governor Whitcomb had spent most of the night in his room, demanding the pilfered volume be returned. A few days later, as the story of the Governor Whitcomb's ghostly visit spread across campus, a co-ed, who heard it raced to the library just a few minutes before closing. She too had borrowed a volume from the Whitcomb collection. DePaul University opened a new library in 1956, although the collection given by Governor Whitcomb to the school is housed in the building. There has been no recent reports of a ghost haranguing recumbent students. But then, there hasn't been any books taken from the Whitcomb collection. They are kept behind locked doors now, and with a protector like the ghost of Governor Whitcomb, students leave them where they are. Alright, that's it for those stories. Thank you for listening. I'll come back for more.